Welcome to another scenario from Storming the Gap, the World at War 85 game system. Today we're going to play scenario 18, Pandemonium. Scenario 18 builds on the back of the last scenario, 17. In 17, the Soviets were doing a dastardly trick and trying to deceive the US, and this trick worked and they managed to push units through. So in scenario 18, Pandemonium, the US have been caught out on the hop and the Soviets are continuing to push really hard, and so the US are redeploying their units back to previous lines as fast as they can, and the Soviets come on, and East Germans, and they run into a US holding force. And so the objectives are that the US has to hold what they've got but also exit units off the other side of the board. This is 10 turns, and the US has a variety of artillery, but not much of anything. Soviets don't have anything. Even though it follows on from the last episode, which was episode 17, scenario 17, miraculously all the snow's melted, and we're now back to a summer map. The US sets up some of its forces first, and they are already on the map, as you can see. Down here, we've got a M1 Abrams company, and they're dug into one of the scenario towns, one of the two. Well, strictly they're not dug in, not except for that guy there who's in improved positions. It's the first time we've had this improved positions, I think, since the first scenario. And basically, well, not basically, exactly any unit in an improved position ignores the first hit roll dice. Up on this hill here, we've got an M60 company hanging around in the woods. And over here, we've got an infantry company with Bradleys underneath the infantry there. And there's another one there. So they've got 3 Bradleys, 3 infantry. And what all these hexes have is they have a fortified improved position. And I think that's hopefully going to make the infantry quite strong. There's also a 106 self-propelled mortar hanging around there. And of course these two here are actually in a town, so they give infantry 2 defensive dice, +1 for, well, not +1, but you ignore the first hit dice, which is even better. And then there's 2 of them are actually up a hill as well. What the US have also got, and I've put them on and taken them off, is they've also got 4 placed minefields. So I've placed minefields, and they have to be within sight of the gold infantry company in the town there on the right. They have to be within sight of that, line of sight. And you place 4 minefield hexes within line of sight, and they're hidden from the Soviets. So I've got them written on a sheet of paper. But what I've done is I've actually done 8, and 8 hexes rather than 4. And what I'm going to do is, just to make it a little bit more difficult for me, when someone rolls onto one of those hexes, I'm going to roll a dice on a 1, 2 or 3. It's a miss on a 4, 5 or 6. It's actually a minefield hex until all 4 minefield hexes are exposed. So these are the American formations, the US. 2 activation cards each. Coming on turn 2, they've got a couple of it's a squadron or whatever it is, 2 counters of Cobras, and they've got a Warthog Kaz. It comes on turn 5. The Soviets, on the other hand, walking carefully around to the other side of the table, have got 2 East German battalions, 1 T-72, and they've got a designated formation there which they can apply to either battalion. And they've also got mechanised infantry, again with 7 BMP-1s and 3 BMP-2s, No T-55s here, so a bit light on support, but they've still got two DM2s, which, as we found in the last game, are really good for removing concealed positions. And they've also got, the Soviets have got, I should say, a, I don't know whether it's battalion sized, but they've got an air mobile infantry battalion, assault battalion, that arrives via HIP helicopters from turn 4, and they've got 2 activation cards, and they've got a frogfoot cast, as you can see, and that's it. And that's applicable from turn 1. So this game has a battlefield friction and also 3 end operations cards, and 3 end operations cards means that the end of ops tends to turn up fairly quickly, so it's possible for units to miss their entire go. So that's going to be interesting. What I'm sort of thinking from the Americans' point of view, because they're the ones who've had to set up first, and I am probably going to replace that light at some stage. The objectives are that the Americans win a marginal victory, and I might go back around their side of the table. The Americans win a marginal victory if they exit either 1 or 2, well no, if they exit a minimum of 2 of M60s or M1s off the west side of the table, and they still hold either that objective, which is the 2 town hexes, or that objective, which is the 3 town hexes. So exit 2, hold 1, marginal US victory. A decisive US victory is if they hold both the objectives, that one, and they exit 3 of these 6 vehicles off the west side of the map. So in thinking about the setup, I had to go, oh gosh, because the 2 American tank companies had to set up on this map, and the mechanized infantry had to set up within 4 of that town. There's not much point putting the infantry out in the open, so that's why I've got them in the town, because when they're dug into cities, infantry get 2 dice roll modifier, plus 1 if they've gone to, if they're ops, if they're not ops complete, and plus 1 for the transpositions. So they're pretty strong, and that's why I've got them centered back in the town. With these guys here, the blue guys are sort of set up to deter the Soviets just coming on willy-nilly from one of these corners, because the M60s can advance quite quickly because they can move up to 3 movement points without losing any detriment to their fire. So they're sort of, anyone who comes on here, they're sort of vaguely threatening them, but also they're in a position where they can quickly head westwards, because at least 2 of those 6 vehicles needs to exit. So the M1s, on the other hand, are basically dug into that town. So these guys are positioned to exit, and depending where the Soviets come on, they may, exit straight away. So the Americans are pitching for a decisive victory, but they're prepared to take a marginal victory. If they were going to pitch for a marginal victory and give away the decisive, then those yellow M1 Abrams would have been around the gold infantry somewhere. But this way it's a bit more confusing for the Soviets, and also it's always in these games about delaying, and having the US forces spread out like that, especially with mines here and there, is going to delay the Soviets a little bit. So let's see how it goes. I do find this is to be a very good tactical game, easy and quick to play, and plenty of fun.